Welcome to the Podcast Profits Unleashed podcast on Mintwave Radio and all podcast platforms. If you're a coach, consultant, therapist, or healer with an online program and would like to find out how to grow your business whilst having fun podcasting, go to podcastprofitsunleashed.com/free. Let's dive into today's episode.
So, welcome to the show. And today we have Adam, AAA Adams. I'm sure he'll explain that bit in a little bit. And today we're going to be talking about social media algorithms. I'm your host, Karen Roberts, helping coaches to set up and launch their podcast so that it turns them into a sale machine. So, Adam, after selling his first podcast and seeing everything that his show did for his business, Adam founded a company to serve podcasters in a whole new way, which I'm sure he'll share with you in a minute. Knowing that successful business owners have already learned to stay in their lane and focus on revenue generating activities, Adam founded Grow Your Show, which is his podcast that I have had the pleasure of being on myself. It's the easy button for podcasters. There's some fantastic value in that podcast. So go and check it out wherever you listen to podcasts. And they make having a top-rated podcast as easy as pressing record. So he's got loads of insights that I'm sure he's about to share with you. So welcome to the show, Adam.
Yeah, stoked to be here, Karen. It's nice.
First of all, before we get on to your story, do you want to start by, what's the AAA? Adam, AAA Adams.
Yeah, my initials are all A's. It's funny, I was at a mastermind group, a business mastermind and my mom supports the company. She retired from corporate, and she's been helping me part-time for about almost a year now. Anyway, in front of the whole group, I go, yeah, it's Adam Adams. That's my real name, and it's my mom's fault. But yeah, she named me with 3 A's. So everybody seems to want to call me A squared, A cubed, double A, or triple A. So I've adopted it.
Fantastic. So you had a successful podcast that was driving business. So why did you sell it and decide to go a slightly different route? What's the inspiration behind that?
The podcast that I sold was driving business for 2 reasons. The first is because I had been around for a while. And so in the real estate space, it was one of the first real estate podcasts. And so a lot of people knew about my show and a lot of people listened. And so it just happened to drive business because it had so many listeners. And the other reason that it probably drove business is because I used it as a tool, whereas it would give me entry into some doors like speaking at events and being on other people's podcasts and bringing on my perfect avatar, which at that time is a passive investor who wanted to invest in real estate just as a limited partner. And so really it only did it because I had so many listeners, and I don't think most of us are going to have so many. Most of us are going to have a smaller amount. And so I made a big mistake. I made a mistake meaning that I wasn't really attracting my perfect avatar. So the person that I wanted to attract, I wasn't doing the best, even just with the name of the podcast. So going into that, I wanted to bring in people that had a huge amount of cash available so that they could invest, because you could either use OPM or OP, other people's experience, other people's time. And so basically OPM, other people's money, that was me running the deals with their money. And they're the smart ones. They're the ones that are putting their money to work for them. But it was called creative real estate. So if you think about it, it's really not gonna be something that somebody with this high net worth is going to be searching for. Like the SEO is not there. And so I ended up selling it. It did produce, but I think it only produced because I had been around for a while and because I was talking to people one-on-one and making sure to use it as best as I could. The reason for selling it is because I wanted to go another direction to be able to have my exact right avatar from the get-go. Everybody that I wanted on my show, everybody that I had on my show should serve my avatar. Every question that I ask should be beneficial to my avatar. Every piece of content, every idea, the title of the podcast, the avatar should be looking for that stuff. And it just wasn't. I got lucky. And so it still did some things, but it wasn't working the way that I wanted to. So I decided to just stop it. And a few guys, actually from that same mastermind that I was talking to you about, my mom came with me because she's serving at our company. We've got 37 full-time employees, and then she's part-time. We're sitting here in this group, and I told everybody that I wanted to go another direction, and I got 3 offers for above $50,000 just in that room. And so, yeah, I ended up selling it soon after that.
Wow. It just goes to show, though, that if you really want to have a successful show and you want to use it to drive business, that it needs to be in complete alignment with everything that you're doing. So it's crystal clear to the listener. It makes so much sense. I made the mistake myself when I started. There was no alignment, but it was very disjointed with the whole business. So you started again from scratch, but built it with the end in mind, which is really what people need to do. So let's go back to we were going to talk about the social media algorithm. And if you'd like to share, how can that help your podcast?
Absolutely. One of the things that I was doing with social media, I think, was being more intentional about it than others. Figuring out how often to post and what to post about was something that took me a little while, and I eventually got there. And I've been helping clients that have podcasts to be able to grow their influence by utilizing social media as one of the ways to grow. So, with that said, here's a few things that I learned along the way that I think your listener, also the person with us, will be able to take into their podcast and also their business. And the first one is we need to think and understand that most of these social media platforms, they really have one goal, and that is to keep attention. And the goal of keeping attention is so that they can make money. So they've got investors. They have, for example, Facebook at this time of our recording. It's a publicly traded company. So there's people that passively invest, like the investors we were talking about for real estate earlier, but they passively invest through the stock market into Facebook. And they want to make a return. The only way for them to make a return is if Facebook has advertisers. And the only way for the advertisers to keep advertising is if it works. If it doesn't work, then they'll all lose money. Facebook will lose money. The investors will lose money. So they have built in some algorithms to support, to figure out what's going on to ensure that they can set it and forget it, that they're always going to be able to keep people's attention. One of the ways that they do that is it's called a split testing, A/B testing, which basically means, Karen, you've made a post, and Adam, I've made a post. And we both post on social media. What Facebook's going to do immediately so that they can keep attention and make money is they just determine if your post is going to bring more people and keep them on the platform, or if my post is. And so if yours is going to keep more engagement, then they squash me. They get rid of me immediately. And instead of putting you in front of a few of your people, they'll put you in front of a ton of your people. And so think of it like this. They test you with a small audience. It makes us sad. Your listener today is possibly crying because they're thinking, oh, why doesn't all of my friends see my post? The issue is you probably haven't built up that reputation within your social media to allow those posts to work. It's not that Facebook doesn't work. It's that you haven't learned the algorithm. And by the end of this episode, you'll know that algorithm and you know how to be able to keep people's attention. So here's a formula that will be able to serve the listener. If they write down hook, story, offer, those 3 things, it's the hook is the first piece, the story is the second piece, and then the offer is the last piece. And most people aren't understanding what they need to do to be able to keep that attention. With the hook, that means you're going to grab people's attention. So they built in an algorithm with Facebook and all these other platforms. They built in an algorithm that shows if the person who's mundanely scrolling through, if they pause, if they quote, stop the scroll. So if they're going through and they see one person's, they go past it, they see the next person's, they go past it, they see the next person's. As soon as they see the one where they pause, they stop, that triggers the first algorithm that says, hey, we need to put this post in front of even more people than we're putting it in front of now, because it's getting people to stop scrolling and keeping people on the app. The way that you do that with your hook is to either say something like a question or a statistic. On your Facebook, if you start out by telling people things, it's probably going to go in one eye and out the other. They're going to just scroll right past it because, unfortunately, there's nothing in there that gets our attention. We need what's called a pattern interrupt in order to get attention. The pattern interrupt is the question or the statistic. Questions and statistics make us stop and make us think. So if we are thinking, how do I make my social media active? How do I make it work so that my podcast can grow or that my business can grow, or both? Then I need to figure out how to utilize hook, story, offer to get the algorithm to put me in front of more people. I want to just mention a quick story about a guy named Brad, who was one of my clients, or still is a client. But when he first started with us over a year ago, I went into his Facebook and we were going to make a post together. I was going to support him to make a post that got in front of lots of people, to teach people that let people know that he was starting a podcast. So in the beginning, we're jumping in there and I start basically giving him an audit of his Facebook. And I see that out of the last 30 posts, and he posted almost every day, but out of the last 30-ish posts, this is about a month of content, he never ever got more than 3 likes or 3 comments. So I remember that distinctly. All right, you got 1 here. Oh, you got 2 here, 2 comments. That's not bad. And I remember the one time where he had 3 comments. And I said, all right, this is going to be tough, Brad. This is going to be really tough because your Facebook isn't proving that you can do this. But I want to give you my commitment that when you and I make this post together, it's going to get at least 50 comments. I knew that confidently. And it was because he hadn't been utilizing the algorithm at all. And I'll share with the listener a few things that he was making mistakes on that we can avoid to ensure that we're able to get in front of the right people. Well, Brad and I got together. I think we spent about half an hour creating a post to teach people that he had a podcast coming out. And it started out something like this. His hook was, I can't believe I'm actually going to do it. That was his hook. Usually a question or a statistic, but anything that grabs attention. I can't believe I'm actually going to do it. Friends and it goes in. Friends and family have been telling me that I should be starting a podcast, that it could help me with this, it could help me with this. And I never wanted to do it until I realized that I could really actually serve somebody. The person that I can serve is, and then he called out his avatar. He said exactly who he helps. And then he had an offer, which was, let me know in the comments below if you'd like to be a part of it. At the end of the day, he had over 400 comments. So I way underestimated it. So from 3 being the max to 400, I'm not doing the math, but that's more than 130 times, I believe, more than 130 times the value, the exposure that he got. And we just used some of these techniques that we'll share with the listener right now. Number 1, a mistake that a lot of people make is they put links in the post. Why do they put links? They put links because they say to themselves, you know what? I need people to go to my website, podcastprofitsunleashed.com/free. And if I don't put that link in the in there, how would they ever know? So we're afraid to not put it because what are they going to do? A Google search to find our free giveaway? What's going to happen? So the way that I told him is I said, get rid of all links because these outside links, there's a built-in algorithm that knows if you put a link, and if you have a link, Facebook says, oh crap, I would use a different language. Oh crap, I don't think that people are going to stay on my platform if I give them an outside link. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shadow ban or hide this post. Karen put her website on there. Not good. We don't want them going to podcastprofitsunleashed.com. We want them on Facebook. So that's the first mistake. Other things that we can do is instead of telling people, we ask. So it's that hook. Other things that we can do for algorithms is a good call to action. The best CTA or offer at the end, you remember hook, story, offer. The best thing that we can ask them to do, it goes back with what I said to Brad. On Brad's post, after we got the hook and the story, which was telling the person what they needed to know, our offer was, if you'd be interested, let me know in the comments. So it switches it completely from already having a link that gets hidden or putting a link in the comments, by the way, which is a no. People say, oh, if you put the link later in the comments, it's not going to trigger that algorithm. And they're right. But that's still BS because it's not all about just the algorithm. The algorithm isn't the only thing to do. There is a different piece to this algorithm that, yes, you don't have a link in the post, you only have it in the comment, but if I'm Adam and I'm going to Karen's post right now and she put her link in the comments, do I have to ask her for the link? The answer is no. I scroll down, I see that I want this thing, and then I go down to the link and I get off of Facebook. What's the better way to do it is let me know if you want the link. Just let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to get you the link. And then they come down and say, I want it. And the next person says, me too. I want it also. I would love to get that free giveaway that you have. Oh, me too. Now it's doing a couple of things. It's building up this algorithm within Facebook that says that you get engagement. If you get what's called engagement, then they're split testing you and you're winning again. You're getting in front of all the other people. And this is what happened with Brad. All of a sudden, he had a few people commenting because a few people saw it and a few people wanted it. But now that he has those people commenting, the algorithm says, we need to put this in front of more of his friends. So it did. So instead of 10 people even knowing that he had that post, now more than 400 knew that he had that post. And then we look at some psychology when everybody's raising their hand and saying, I want it, even if we didn't quite want it, and this gets in front of us, we're more likely to say the social proofing, everybody else wants this, maybe I ought to want it. And when we would have ignored it, we see all of this social proofing and we become that person who engages with the post as well, which makes an upward spiral. So it keeps getting in front of more and more people. That's just a few tips and tricks, and we can go into more detail or anything that you want, Karen, whatever you think the listener needs.
Love that. And I know I'm guilty of doing that. I put it in the comments. So I need to stop doing that. So what do you think are some of the reasons that people don't? I've always known that, you want to get engagement, but I always figure that you're not really going to build your podcast using social media because, like you said, it's taking people from Facebook. I want them to listen on Apple Podcasts. So I suppose I do it more for just awareness. But that makes a lot of sense. So I just take it out and people will come and find you. So why else do you think people aren't doing that and they're putting they keep putting the link in? Because I know I've done it.
I think they put the link in. The other big reason that they do it is probably just because it takes time and effort if you want to make a post that's really engaging. For example, if I put on a post, that one that Brad did, he got more than 400 comments. If he puts in that post and 400 people say to him, I want your link to your podcast, well, obviously it puts him at a little bit of work, or his virtual assistant, or his executive assistant, or his chat bot, or whatever. It puts something or someone at work, because now that everybody's asking for his podcast, he has to do the effort of giving it to them. So that's one reason why we get away from it, because we just think it's easier to just have it in. But as soon as we just put it in the chat, not as many people will see it. And so it's difficult. And for me, I work with my virtual assistant, and hopefully this is a ninja strategy, like a secondary beneficial strategy for the listener who is probably a podcaster and a business owner, or wants to be, thinking, how do I get this to work? So for me, I'll make that original post. I'll create the copy to get a post that has a good hook, story, and offer. And then I will go and write 6 ways of replying, at least 6 ways of replying. Oh, you said you wanted it. Would you rather me send it to you into your email or just down in the DMs? That's one option. The second option would be, hey, I got your comment. Happy to send it over. What's best, a PM or an email? ?
Brilliant.
The third one would be something like, sweet, happy to send that off to you. Do you want me to just email it to you, or is a private message best? And it goes on like that. And now we've got, so my VA is handling these. Yeah, it's getting more and more comments, but the VA is handling these at $3, $4, $5 an hour. And essentially what's going to happen as she handles it, or as he handles it, is they put in that first question and the person replies, and then they say, oh, just a PM is fine, or a private message. Oh, just a PM's fine. Then my VA will say, got it. I'm sending it to you now. Let me know when you get it, ? So that's another comment. And then so they go over, they send it, and then they come back. And when the person says, got it, I received it, thank you. Yeah, no problem. Let me know what you think about it, ? And it continues to gain more engagement. Yeah, why do people not do it? A, because they don't want to put the time and effort. But also, if we don't put in the time and effort for some things, we don't get anywhere near the results. You spend an extra hour. Let's just say the post took you 5 minutes to create and push send or post. And the extra hour is the small bits of 2 minutes here, back and forth, to connect with all of your people. They potentially want to avoid the time and effort of that extra hour, because maybe they're thinking that their hourly rate is worth a few $100s or something. And so, hey, I'm worth so much more, I can't be commenting for free. But I think that's bad thinking. I think that's the wrong way to be looking at life and at effort and connection and business growth, because we get the most of know, like, trust factor by utilizing all 3 parts of what I call the it's funny that I forget the word when I'm on the spot, right? So there's thought leadership, there's social media, and then there's meeting people in person. And these are the 3 pillars of influence. The pillars of influence have you imagine a 3-legged stool. And I want you to imagine this, because I keep getting people asking me when I say that social media is important and podcasting is important and face-to-face or connection with people is important. And they're thinking, oh, I'm so busy, or I don't want to spend too much effort. Adam, which one's the most important out of the 3? And I would say that they're equal. They have to be pretty close to equal. If you cut an inch off of one of those three legs, you'll be fine. If you gain an inch on one of those three legs, you'll be fine. But if you cut a leg off, you'll tip over. You will fall over. So you do need, if you're really wanting to influence your listener, your avatar, your potential client, you ought to be on social media. You ought to have a thought leadership platform like a podcast, and you ought to meet people face to face. And in my opinion, one thing that counts is social media interaction. So when you take that small bit more effort to reply to people, comment back and forth, DM them, email them, you're now gaining that know, like, trust factor at a higher level because you're able to connect with them on a higher, more personal way that makes that person think, oh, I like Karen. Karen's great. She was responsive. She's the type of person that I would work with. You're giving this message to your person by just simply taking that extra 1 hour-ish effort on top of the first 5 minutes. There's no other way to do it.
It's all about nurturing then, isn't it? It's not about just putting it out there, but you've got to develop the nurturing skills to bring them into your world. That makes a lot of sense. So basically, what I've learned from that is I've been a bit lazy.
Haven't we all? The listener knows that they're in the same position.
Yeah. And so there you go. It is going to take time. If you do it in the right way and you set up your podcast with the end in mind from the get-go, just like Adam has just shared with you. So how long, to give some context to the listeners, how long ago did you restart? So starting from scratch with this new way?
Yeah. I started the first podcast in 2016. And I sold it in 2020 around the same time of launching a next podcast. The first podcast had made it into the top 0.5%. And this new podcast made it now into the top 0.5%. The first one was getting 16,000 downloads a week. I don't know how much that is per episode or per month. But the new one is getting a quarter of that. So the new one's getting a quarter, but I'm making a significant amount more money through the new one. So don't think of your podcast as only the listener, only the listens, only the downloads. Don't think of it as just that. I was having a podcast called Creative Real Estate, and I was really essentially supporting the person who had no money. And I still was able to make decent traction and money through having a podcast. This new one, I have about 25% of the listeners, but I'm going anywhere from, on the shortest, the lowest ever, 22,000 in a month, and then the highest ever, a little over the first six figures, so barely over 100 grand per month. And so this money comes in through the podcast each month, and on average about 35,000. And I have a quarter of the listeners. It's getting close to $500,000 a year through just the podcast avenue. And so that's not crazy big, unheard of, and it's certainly not small. It works, and it does what you need. And so don't stress out about how many listeners you have. Stress out about how is your funnel working for know and trust. Do you have your thought leadership platform so that the most amount of people know you? This is at the top of the funnel, the know part. Do I have my podcast in place? Am I working with Karen already? If so, awesome. The most amount of people possible will know who you are. Now, in the second part of the funnel, the like funnel, how do people vet you right now? They go and they search your name on Google, they search your name on LinkedIn, they search your name on Facebook. They try to find you on social media. If they can't even find you, they're probably not going to do business with you. That's the like piece. That's the middle of the funnel. And that the smallest part at the very bottom, that's the trust factor. This is what happens when we actually have communication one-on-one. This is what happens when we are meeting somebody in person, when we're at a conference with them, when we're on a Zoom, like we're recording like on a Zoom right now, face to face. Or if you are engaging on your Facebook, because that makes that trust factor so much faster. So if we're utilizing this stuff, we will be able to make money through our podcast and through our business because we're in those places and we've got, you said it earlier, it's beginning with the end in mind. Stephen Covey also said that, begin with the end in mind. That's one of the habits of highly effective people, is that we have an understanding of where this is going. And having your 3 pillars of influence to get people to know you, like you, trust you, that is, I want to repeat it one more time to make sure that the listener has it. Your thought leadership platform, your social media, and one-on-one interaction. So long as you're doing this, you're going to be successful for you. And so hopefully the listener is like, yeah, let me get that going right now.
And what would you say to the people? Because I get this all the time. I know at the end of the day, everyone's busy, right? They're busy with dealing with their current clients. They're busy trying to create social media posts and trying to create engagement or value posts or curiosity posts. However, like you've just totally shared there, that having a podcast is a massive part of this, and it is going to build on the know, like, and trust. But so many will avoid doing it because I think they get overwhelmed with the whole idea, because there's a lot that goes into starting and launching a podcast. But what's the deciding factor? What's going to put people up that have got a podcast? Do you think that's putting them up as the expert in their niche? What would you say to people that are thinking about it and they're being put off because of the overwhelm? Is it worth it or not?
It can be worth it as long as you use it the right way. You might ask, is it worth it to own a car? And the answer is, are you going to be driving to appointments? Are you going to be recklessly driving? Are you going to try to drive backwards on the freeway? If you're going to use that vehicle in a good way, it's going to give you value. It's going to make you more money. It's going to make life more easy for you. It's going to save you time and effort to have that car or that podcast. But if you're going to just have a car and let it sit in your driveway, it's probably not going to do that much except cost you money. If you have a car and you're recklessly doing it, like you didn't begin with the end in mind, and you're just like, oh, let me just drive around. I see people driving around and they're making money. I'm just going to drive around. It's not going to make you the money just to drive around. You have to have a plan. You have to have a destination. You have to have some thought process with your podcast if you want that to make you money. So in short, yes, a podcast can absolutely support you, help you make money, get you in front of the right people, as long as you're using it right. But if you're going to keep it parked or drive backwards or whatever, then it's not going to give you the same value. You have to be able to understand how to use that tool to your advantage.
Do you help people start a podcast as well, or do you work with people already with a podcast?
Yeah, we have 2 avatars for our podcast called The Podcast on Podcasting, and for our company, we have 2 avatars, the primary and the secondary. The primary avatar is we've got somebody who's been in podcasting for 2 or more years, and unfortunately, it's not getting them the same result that they expected. So they've got the car, but they're not using it right. That's our first avatar, the one that we can work extremely well with. Somebody who's been flopping around, beating their head against a wall, and wants to figure out how to get those results because they put so much time and effort into it so far. How do I get this across the line? That's our main avatar. And we've been able to serve a lot of people to be able to grow their influence through their podcast just by listening to a couple of their episodes, helping them tweak just a couple things, and then being able to add some marketing toward it. Marketing, I always think, is the fuel to the fire. Think of a car again. If you've got a car and you've got a destination, what do you need? You also need gas. Without gas, you're not moving. You've got the destination in mind, you've got the vehicle, but you have to have the fuel. So for those clients, we add the fuel with paid ads to be able to get them in front of the right person so that they can start adding value to that person, and that person ends up hiring them. So you just need to add the gas, the fuel, the marketing. Our secondary avatar is somebody who's about to launch a podcast and says, I never want to go through that crap. I don't want to ever try that. Beating my head against the wall doesn't sound fun. Doing this for 5 years straight without results sounds horrible. I would rather figure out how to get results sooner. And so when I launch, I understand the value of hiring somebody who knows what they're doing on that end to be able to support me. So primary, somebody who's already got it, but it's not really working. Secondary, someone who's about to get it and never wants to go through that.
Brilliant. So what should the listeners do next?
Oh yeah, that's our call to action, right? I say they should pull up their Facebook or whatever social they really use the most. And I say that they should think about the hook story offer. I'll give you some tips real quick. The hook will either have a question or a statistic. The story will start out by telling them what you're going to tell them, and then it'll tell them, and then it will wrap it up and tell them what you told them. So within the story, it's going to share everything about that learning lesson for their person on their social media or on their podcast. They can use this. And then the offer would be for them to have a clear call to action. Our call to action right now is go and implement this, go and use this, go and see what this can do for you, going from maybe 3 comments to 400 comments. I want that to be the call to action. I want the call to action to be action driven, where they just jump onto social right now.
Love that. It's all about the implementing, because you can hear all this advice, you can listen to all the different, I don't know, you can watch YouTube videos all day long to learn how to do something. If you don't take action, it's never going to change. So thank you, Adam. I have to say that I'm going to go change my social media posts, because I hold my hand up. We have been adding the link in the comments. And we just figured, you can't really get a lot of traction on social media because they're not putting yourself out there. But there you go. You learn something every day. Stop putting the link in and see what kind of response you get. And I love that the question, the hook. Now, one question I do have for you actually is, how do you feel that so many people say focus on the pain point rather than like the teaching point? Because we always want to talk about the benefit for people, which I suppose is the positive thing. And then others will say, actually focus on the pain point more. What would you say to that?
I know that the pain is more successful to be able to help people. And one of the proof is thinking to the listener, do you take, every time you have a terrible migraine where you're in real pain, how often do you take some type of pain medicine? For most of us, it's 100% of the time. If I've got a bad enough pain, a headache, I'm going to take something to get rid of the pain. But it's not so easy for me to just take my vitamins. And I know the benefit of the vitamins, the micronutrients. I understand micronutrients and macronutrients. And I'm not going to remember and take my vitamin every single day when I'm already feeling good. So when we think about selling to our listener or our social media follower, and by selling, it doesn't mean that there has to be an exchange of money. Selling is a form of influence to be able to support them to learn something, to grow through something. It's going to be easier to talk about the pain point. Today, in this call, if all I did was said, hey, Brad got 400 comments, that's more of the positive. But I was able to, and I didn't even know that I did this really on purpose, but it's, since you're bringing this up, we brought out none of his posts ever got any more than 3 likes or 3 comments. What the listener might be feeling, and I didn't do this on purpose, I'm not trying to manipulate anyone. What the listener might have been saying is, ooh, I often don't get much more than 3 likes or 3 comments either. And they can feel the pain. Like, you've got a wound, I'm rubbing salt in it, right? It's like letting that hurt. And then we talk about how Brad got the 400 comments. And it's, oh, that's what I would rather have. And so it shows the pain of, if you keep doing your social media the way that you're doing, you're going to keep hurting. And it goes with anything that we have for sales. We want to use those thoughts, those impressions, the beating their head against the wall type of analogies to help the listener, help our person understand, hey, that does suck. I want to get away from that. How do I get away from that? So a hook would be, a hook could be, if it's a question, you could say, have you ever wanted to stop losing time and effort by not being able to get in front of people? You want to make it easier? Then you can say, do you want to make it easier to add influence to the person that you're looking for? Then that person can think through it, and they're coming with you on that journey. Always use the Tylenol, not the vitamin.
It's funny how we work, isn't it? But that is always going to drive people more. And then it's about then the listener, if they do resonate with that particular pain point, then they've come to the conclusion themselves rather than you telling them, this is what you need to do. And I think so many people try to come from that. Again, it's like confession. That's what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to give information, and it's not really the way it works. It needs to be the listener coming to the conclusion themselves, because nobody likes to be told, do they?
That's right. That's 100%.
Nobody likes to be told. So, Adam, thank you so much for your time today. That was absolutely brilliant. I learned a lot. I'm sure the listeners would have learned a lot from that. So how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, 2 ways. If they're ready to work with us, go to our website. It's growyourshow.com. And if they just want to hear some great content, the podcast on podcasting.
There you go. It's as simple as that. Brilliant. Right. You enjoy the rest of your day. And to the listeners, I'll be back next week. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to today's episode on the Podcast Profits Unleashed podcast. If you're a coach, consultant, therapist, or healer who would like to drive sales whilst having fun podcasting, head over to podcastprofitsunleashed.com/free and find out how you can turn your podcast into a sales machine. We'll see you on the next episode.